G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the round 3 stock market video. Really exciting times in SuperCoach because we have just had our first price rises of the season. Hope you made some good decisions with your trades. Some people, like myself, decided to use a boost. Lots of people went for some value options. Others decided to fill a few holes in their sides. And some coaches made some major structural moves, but I think last week was certainly the time to do that. And look, if you've still got a couple of holes to fill, it's all good. I'll go through some viable options this week. A few of them, unfortunately, though, it's a bit of a 50-50 type decision because the ship may have sailed and they certainly don't present as much value as what they did last week. But look, apart from that, guys, just want to give a big thank you to all the members that have signed up for $3.99 a month, a few bonuses that you get with that, and best of all, it goes to a great cause. 100% of the proceeds do go to Beyond Blue. So I'll leave it there for the intro. Hope that you're all well. All the best of luck for this week. You know where we start, the 500k plus defenders. At the top of the list this week, we have a couple of West Coast defenders, and this is no surprise because the ball has been living down there lately. We've got Shannon Hearn and Drew McGovern. Very, very similar prices here, $511,100 as compared to McGovern's price tag of $515,100. Break-evens, again, are basically identical. What are the symbols? Well, with Hearn, I do have the old man symbol, but I've also got the fire symbol there, not completely disrespecting the man. On McGovern, I've got the pod symbol because there are very few coaches in the competition that do own this particular McGovern. So do we go with any of these two blokes? I couldn't do it myself. Reason being just because of that scoring history, particularly with McGovern. We haven't seen really consistent premium numbers ever from this bloke to make him really relevant. From Hearn, we certainly have, but it's that age, durability concerns. He's had calf problems, a few different issues over the last couple of years, which has seen him miss a fair bit of football at times. So I'm not a fan of either selection, but they are both certainly pods. If you want to jump on for some reason, I suppose this is the week to jump on. 3-round average from Hearn, 110. McGovern with 120. Yeah, not for me, but if you want to go completely out there, then I suppose you can do it. Isaac Cumming, really talented player down there at the Giants. Is he affecting someone like a Whitfield? I don't think so, but possibly. Whitfield's just got issues of his own at the moment, but 77 for a break even, took 55% of the kick-ins. Again, another one of those pod options. Jaden Short, I feel like I'm on repeat with this bloke each week, but a 3-round average of 118 is absolutely fantastic. Again, he'll find himself sitting right at the top of the list of defenders this year. He is highly owned, but if you don't own him for some reason, you most likely will need to get him in your side, and not a good anti-pod to have at this stage. Just use it so well. I'm not going to mention what he does well because, yeah, again, we all know this. Luke Ryan, 60% of the kick-ins over the weekend. Again, another one of these pod-type selections. His potential to score did go down for a little while during the game when Pearce got injured. Ryan then had to lock down. These things can happen at times with defenders, so there might have been a little bit more meat on the bone there if he did play in his usual or more friendlier role. But with 60% of the kick-ins, that's a good sign. He does tend to get a bit of the ball, but just not for me. I don't think Luke Ryan. Jordan Ridley, well, he's bounced back, hasn't he now? 522,400. The issue with Ridley, and probably why it's not ultra important to discuss all these types of players, that most people aren't looking to bring in a premium defender now, are we? And if you are, then Ridley is an option, but not one of those options I'd realistically look at. 3-round average of 95. That break even is now in the green. So I've got the red arrow to the green arrow symbol there because he is starting to hit some form. And this man, Jordan Dawson, so a 3-round average of 107. One of those picks that would have been more of a popular selection, I think, if we did get to see him playing in the preseason. If he had have gone 100 plus, I think a lot more coaches would have kept some faith in him. I was having a little bit of a look at him, but at the end of the day, without seeing him, just relying on a bit of hope and some educated guesses, I suppose, it was just too tough for me. But if you did start him, congratulations. I don't need to mention what this man did over the weekend, but if you've started him, fantastic. He's an absolute pod on fire. Sam Dougherty, Doc the Lock, we used to call him a few years ago, and have we now gone full circle? Had no kick-ins over the weekend, still pushed out a really decent score. So good to see that he doesn't rely on those to boost up his average. He does get enough of the ball around the ground and generally use it well. They do look to get it into Doc's hands. So look, I don't think there's any reason to discount him as a pick anymore. I've got the same symbol as Dawson. I've got the pod symbol and absolutely on fire. So you'd be wrapped if you're a Dougherty owner, one of the few in the competition. Jack Crisp, I think that owners are just going to be constantly frustrated with him. He'd go anywhere from a 75 up to, let's just say, a 115 type score, and that may change from week to week. Really lucky that he had a decent last quarter, 7 touches and 3 tackles. But I think the main reason for his poor score, well, I wouldn't say the main reason, a reason for his poor score over the weekend was the fact that when Collingwood were actually dominating, he wasn't playing in the midfield, he was actually playing down back, and being not around the action in that particular quarter just really hurt his score. So look, keep on to him for now, but I do have the yin yang and the caution symbol there. Daniel Rich, look, love him as a player, and I think that, well, he's got the same average as Jack Crisp, hasn't he? But he will bounce back. I just think that it's a matter of time. He's got the monopoly of the kick out, so we can rely on him, I think, for a 90-plus score each week. I would look at other options at the moment, but if he has a poor couple of games in a row and gets to an attractive price somewhere under 500,000, I'll certainly look closely at him. Bailey Dale, bit of a pod selection this year. Did take 2/3 of the kick-ins for the Dogs on the weekend, but a 3-round average of 97, yeah, doesn't really appeal to me. Tommy Stewart, I'm pretty much going to have the same symbol on him each week. He's safe as houses, going at a 3-round average, ultra consistent. Seagull, he looks to be a good target still. Had 11 kick-ins, but unbelievably only played on from 10. Normally, it's 100% there. So come on, Seagull, lift your game, mate. Stop kicking out from inside the square. Aaron Hall, so a very low score for his potential, for his lofty standards. When I saw him kick a goal in the first quarter, I was a little bit worried as a non-owner, but ended up with one of his worst, if not his worst score when playing his current role. You can't take a lot out of this game, if you can call it that. More like a training run for Brisbane, but his break-even, it's now 142, and he's a real pod. So, look, I'd love another low game or two so I can jump on, but I expect him to bounce back, and if fit, he should score well. 8 out of 18 kick-ins on the weekend as well, so always some free points on offer for Hall, and I've got the seagull symbol there, as well as Lloyd. They're 2 seagulls, 2 peas in a pod, aren't they? And Zeeble, look, 33% of the kick-ins, not much interest around him this year, just a pass for me. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k, a very popular trading option last week. Jake Bowie now finds himself at 328,300 for a 3-round average, just under 3 figures at 99, and a very, very healthy break-even, negative 46. Now, I do have the buy it now symbol there, but also the caution symbol. I just don't know if the value's there. It depends if you're a believer. But look, over the weekend, 18 touches at 83% efficiency, 3 tackles, only the 7 contested possessions, so clearly down from last week, and that's expected. Really, really tough to back up the score that he produced last week. And look, to be honest, it could even be a career best score, who knows, but he still scored well, you know, around the 90 mark, made a healthy profit, as we said, which means that if you buy this week, you have lost a lot of value. There's still a lot of meat on the bone, I think, but probably too late for mine. If you're a big believer in him, though, feel free to bring him in, but I think that unfortunately the ship has probably sailed. Rioli, he's looking good down back. They've always been a big fan of his, but he seems to have revived his career. I think he could actually work out, but you're taking a bit of a risk. But at the same time, if you jumped on last week, it's looking like a decent move. Nelson, nice average so far, but no from me. Answorth, he's been decent, but too late to obviously bring him in. Chapman, now, I was really worried about this pick, and I do have the same concerns that I mentioned in last week's stock market video, but what I really love from Chapman this week is that he had a really consistent game. So each quarter, he just ticked along, and managed to get himself to 3 figures. Now, I'm an owner. I've been frustrated. I even had him on the bench last week, would you believe it or not. I had Mccartney on field in place of him, but I think that you just got to keep for now and just watch to see how he goes. I liked what I saw from him. They used him a lot more. Previously in the last couple of weeks, they just haven't looked to get the ball in his hands, but the setup was a little bit different this week. A man that we'll talk about, well, we won't even bother about talking about Young, I'll just mention him now. Really poor game from him. I did like him as a selection. Thought he could have been one of those breakout options when I mentioned him last week. Just a poor game from him. And I'm not sure if there's a bit of a pattern here. Chapman will have a good game. Young maybe down or vice versa. But for now, we'll just keep on to him. Hopefully has another decent score and we can at least make a little bit of money and obviously have that great job security each week. The Lizard looking exciting with a nice 3-round average, but I don't think we can select him. He's gone up a little bit in price, but just love watching him play. He would be a fun player to own, I must admit. Hewitt, lovely selection. I think that he's an absolute must-have. What I loved about Hewitt's game this week is the fact that that kick-to-handball ratio was a 50-50 split. Very rare to see this from Georgia Hewitt, so love the fact that he's kicking the ball. Also laid 9 tackles, so putting his body on the line, putting on that pressure, still getting a lot of the ball himself. You've just got to have him, one of the absolute must-haves this year, I think. Foley, just pass on him. Sinclair is a really, really interesting pod option now. 116 over the weekend, only owned by 1% of teams. Now playing through the midfield, 50% CBAs over the weekend. So I really like what I see from this man. Also plays a pretty decent role when he's coming off the half-back line and can score there. So look, if you're looking for the ultimate pod, this bloke could actually be a man. The main concern is the fact that there are some midfielders out, some first-choice midfielders like your Jones, probably a Hunter Clark would come back in maybe 3 to 4 weeks. Is that too long? I'm not too sure on the time frame there of his return, but that's probably my main concern with bringing in Sinclair if you're buying him as a midfielder. But as I mentioned before, worst case scenario, he goes down back, still gets a fair bit of the football down there. Yeah, a really interesting pick. I wouldn't do it myself, but if you're looking to go away from the pack, I don't think that it's a really bad move. Stephen May, he literally took every one of the kick-ins, 100% of them. Talk about having the monopoly. He owns Old Kent right up to Mayfair when it comes to kick-ins, this bloke. 22 disposals, so got a bit of his own ball, but only the 4 marks. Consecutive tons, so pretty nice, but I don't think we can really select him at this stage. Hayden Young, as I mentioned before, a poor game from him. That's disappointing. It sort of puts you off the pick a little bit at this stage. James Sisley, well, he's been a decent starting selection for those that went with him. 3-round average of 98, but that break-even is at 84, which suggests to me that there's not a lot of value here. So if you are selecting Sisley now, and I don't think there's really any reason for people to be looking to bring him in this week, you're not really bringing him in as a value selection. I think that you're looking at him as a top 8 defender, for example. But I just don't think it's the time to be looking at Sisley. Dan Houston, the main issue with him, I think, is consistency of role. And look, he can score well as a mid, score well as a forward, but traditionally just been a bit of a roller coaster type pick. Certainly a pod selection, though, if you're looking to go there. Lockie Whitfield, I think we pretty much made our decisions last week with this pick. So if you decided to hold on to him, I think you'd be pretty happy with the 90-plus score. And if you trade him out, depending on who you got in, I know George Hewitt was a really popular trading option for Whitfield, then you may be quite happy. If you did go with someone like an Aaron Hall, who I know some people did go with as a bit of a pod selection, then you wouldn't be happy after 1 week, but I think that was a bit of a once-off with Hall, as I mentioned before. But look, going into the future, my plan with Whitfield is to give him 2 to 3 weeks just to see exactly what this pick's going to look like going into the mid-stage of the season. If he's still pumping out even 80 type scores, I think that I've just got to jump ship or just move him on when the time is right. But if he's going 95, I'm pretty much okay with that, and I'll view him as my D6, hopefully, for the rest of the year. CJ, geez, this bloke is exciting to watch. Had a phenomenal game over the weekend. I think consistency may be a bit of an issue, but just keep him on your watch list, I think, for now. And Caleb Daniel, well, what do you do with this pick? A real pod-type selection, but break-even 149, 3-round average of 80. if you haven't got George Hewitt and you do own Caleb Daniel, I think that that's a really, really obvious move. Do you go with the Jake Bowie? Well, I think he's got probably higher scoring potential than Daniel, so that may even be a move, a bit of a wacky move. You save 150k, Bowie's going to go right up in value, Daniel's going to come right down, so that may be a bit of a move, but I'm probably only speaking to a handful of people here, if any, because Daniel is one of those real pod type selections. On to the defenders under 250k. Up the top of the list, we have Mitch Hinge. So 16 touches on the weekend with a couple of bonus kick-ins. Superb disposal efficiency, going above 90%, which is a big reason why he scored so well, I think. Possibly looking to be gifted DPP status as he's been pushing up the ground a little bit more, which would be really handy. You can confidently field him, and he's just improving each week. So I think you've missed the boat here, and hard to trade in at the price, but he's been an absolutely fantastic starting pick for us, Mitchie. Sammy Skinner on the bubble this week. I love this bloke, really friendly type fella, extremely resilient also after all those knee operations, so it'd be great if he could get his career going again after things just didn't quite work out the lines. He sprayed his ankle in the third quarter and was subbed off, but I've heard he'll likely be available this week. Only 8 touches, but used the ball well every time he touched it with 100% efficiency. And with the league going down, his job security seems to be solid for the time being. I think he'll average anywhere between maybe 50 to 65. If he's fit, I think you can bring him in if you really need to. And it would be a choice between him and a man we'll talk about in a sec, Nathan O'Driscoll. Hayden Mccartney, a solid game up to three-quarter time, but unfortunately couldn't add to his score in the last term. Was scoring at a really consistent rate, almost right on 20 points a quarter, but just went missing in the final quarter with the one handball. Still a good fieldable rookie option with a great role and the added bonus of DPP. So loving what Paddy's doing this year. Sammy Draper, 11 touches at 81% efficiency. Like Mccartney, has really good job security, albeit he lacks Paddy's scoring power. Will be a bit of a slow burn, so just leaving our bench for now. Let him tick over. Nazaya Wangani Malira on the bubble this week after missing round 1. Elite use of the ball and known more for his outside game. 12 touches to go along with 3 clearances. Is respectful enough, but doesn't scream pick me. A concern for me is his low TOG with only 61%. So pass for me, particularly at his inflated price. Joel Smith, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about the pick. We're not going to pick him up for 200k, so not much discussion needed. Nathan O'Driscoll, another man on the bubble, scored just the 49 points, but in 67% game time. I was looking forward to seeing how he'd go when given a full game, and it was just okay. Kicked a goal which helped his score, but only went at 58% efficiency, so not sure he keeps his spot when there's some stars return. But the kid's got talent. There's a chance he stays in the team short term. Unless you're really desperate for a defensive rookie, I think it's more than okay to pass on him. And Gibcus was always going to be a bit of a slow burn, but 62, still a pretty decent score from him and higher than what I would have expected. Only the 8 disposals, but it's not his job to accumulate the football. Seems to be playing his role well, and we hold until the break even becomes close to his average. On to the midfielders, 500k plus, and the man up the top, Cripper. Most of us have him by now, don't we? Another brilliant score, 119 over the weekend. Look, we've discussed him to death, so I won't go into too much detail, but 31 touches over the weekend, kicked a goal, 11 tackles as well. This man is absolutely dominating at the moment. So even at the price now, we know that he's gone up a lot, up to 518,800 now. I still think that he is absolutely the best buy from this slot. So if you haven't got him, I still suggest that you try to find a way to get him in this week without risking too much or trading out a player that you really don't want to trade out. The next fella under him, Tommy Green. Talk about a start to the season. I do own this bloke in draft, in the AFL YouTubers draft. Got him for a really, really sneaky pick towards the end there as well. But he's an absolute bull. I'm just so impressed when I see him play, and I see an absolute future SuperCoach gun. And when we say future, it may be now. I'm really not sure the pick, but there are some shades of clarity to Tom Green as well. I really think that he can push a 110 type average. A 139, I don't see happening or continuing to happen. But if you want to take a punt on him, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. But Well, do I say the main issue? A big issue was the fact that he does play for GWS, and Leon Cameron is an absolute nightmare when it comes to super coaches. So, yeah, if you want to go Tom Green, you can. If not, yeah, we pass on him, and hopefully he fizzles out just that little bit. Lachie Neale, 597,200. Wow, after 198, yeah, only a 105, but we can live with that. The poor man rolled his ankle, midway through the second quarter, was copping a tag, and the fact that he really came back, dominated that last quarter with 12 touches, that's a really good sign for me. So I haven't got too many concerns with Neale moving forward. We'll just listen to the training reports coming out of Brisbane just to make sure that the great man is okay. Pendles, he's been tracking along nicely for a 105 3-round average. Main concern with him now is, does he actually get that DPP after round 5? He has been spending a little bit more time in the midfield, so it'll be interesting to see how he's used over the next couple of weeks. Brad Crouch, again, has been tracking along really well. 113 average, break even of 77, but it's just that durability risk with Crouch, and I could never really recommend him as a pick. Andy Broshaw, tell you what, owners would have been really nervous up until half time. Now, a couple of people even had him as a bit of a pod captain. Nelson was wearing him like an absolute glove, and he'd restricted him to only 24 points. And this was a concern that I flagged with Broshaw pre-season. At times, he does find it hard to break the tag. He's clearly Freo's best midfielder and now the obvious target for opposition coaches. But luckily, West Coast needed to change things up after half-time. They dropped the tag, let Broshaw off the chain, and he certainly made up for a poor showing in the first half. What could have been a 50 turned into a much more respectable 96. He went nuts, became Freo's highest possession winner. The tag sign and the yin-yang symbol sum up his game perfectly this week. The scary thing is the potential double tag from the Giants, but again, he's not on Took level yet. It'll be really interesting to see what they do with Broshaw next week. He did tease us, remember, as well last year with a red-hot start, but then faded for a while. Look, if given space and time, or time and space, he should go a 120 plus, but if he gets locked down for a full game, then that score could be split in half. Travis Boak, 133 SuperCoach points, 28 touches over half contested, along with 10 clearances, 8 tackles. This bloke did everything he could to get his team over the line. And someone did mention last week that the old man symbol, the Mr. Burns symbol, was a little bit disrespectful, and I do agree. So I added the watch symbol there as well. 146 average is phenomenal, but I just couldn't bring him in myself. Keezy still scored well with Laird, but no Sloan, so still haven't seen the full complement together. But 25 touches, 16 contested, 7 tackles, just works his butt off. An interesting pod. Clary had his best score of the season with a 146, 38 touches, 18 contested, and the Devils' number, 666 metres gained. That was terrific from Clary, and we'll most likely need to trade him in at some stage. And this week, if you are an owner, think could be a really decent vice-captaincy option. Mills, keep on your watch list. Same goes with JL. He had a really great game. 24 out of 34 CBAs on the weekend, gathered 28 touches, and 24 of those were kicks, along with 2 goals. So, really nice game from him. Got the binoculars on him. Ollie Wines doesn't really interest me, but keep him on your watch list. And Jelly had a quiet game after a nice start to the season. Parrish, I think we keep an eye on and just put in our watch list for a future upgrade. Essendon's fixture starts to become a little more friendly after a tough start, and we all know what he's capable of, so maybe one to look at when it's upgrade season. Still, he's improving every week and starting to reward owners. Nothing massive yet. Certainly haven't seen close to the absolute best of him, but I think it's only a matter of time. Still to Cripps last week plus 200k, I think would work out to be a decent move, but this week I'm 100% holding for now. The Bont, similar to Parrish, seems to be a nice upgrade target later on the year, but being a Mcrae and Dunkley owner, I'm not too keen on loading up with too many stars from the one team, just in case of a major COVID outbreak at the club. He's averaging the same as Steele with a 106, but I'd much rather Steele in my side. Sam Walsh, with the new additions to the Carlton midfield, it seems like his role may have slightly changed this year, and it may revert closer to his 2020 role, playing a little bit more on the outside. He only had 10 CBAs from a total of 26, which was the same as Chera, so they look like the 2 blokes that may be pushed out a little bit. The preferred starters were Cripper, Hewitt and Kennedy. To be honest, he looked much better in this role that he had this week. Managed to rack up 32 touches, 9 contested at 78%. Only the 1 tackle, but we can't expect huge numbers. These are tackling numbers when he's not playing major minutes in the middle. So with Sammy Walsh, I certainly think that we just keep him on our watch list. Jack Mcrae, he was travelling along nicely on the weekend, looking at a 120 type typical Mcrae score, but unfortunately the brakes were put on by a silly Bevo move. He was stuck on a wing last quarter and just didn't add to his 3/4 time total. The quietest quarter I think that I've seen from Jack Mcrae in years. A total of 1 contested handball. And look, I'm not getting too concerned at the moment, but if we do see this becoming a bit of a pattern, then at his price, there are some red flags starting to appear, but not losing the faith yet. He should be fine. Tuke Miller, this was so hard to watch. I mentioned in my round review video that it was like 2 kids bullying my son at school, you know. I felt so helpless watching him get punished from afar. I can't see too many double tags in the future coming Tuke's way, and if there is anyone that can bounce back, it is the Gold Coast captain. Do not look to panic and trade him out after 1 bad score. I guarantee that you will regret it. He'll lose some cash short term, but another 140 just around the corner. Still a very decent captaincy option, and I expect him to be a man on a mission this week. And Titch, look, all I can say is get him out now. If he turns things around, we could potentially pick him up at a really attractive price, but he may not even be keeper material in 2022. The next generation is coming through at Glen Fury, and it seems like he's slowly getting pushed out. Only 12 out of 26 CBAs, and coupled with the fact that he may still be struggling with his groin, I think that means that he's just not viable as a pick at this stage. You just got to jump ship. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k. Jason Horne-Francis tried his best in an absolute stampede type situation. Was good in the middle, effective with clearances, attended 20 out of 34 CBAs, which is a good sign, but not necessarily a good sign for his potential mid-forward DPP status. A lower score for what he can produce, but still respectable and without doubt he's a fieldable option. Angus Broshaw played out of his skin, a huge 176, which will remain in his price cycle for the next 2 weeks. 24 kicks, 10 handballs, 18 contested possessions, 8 clearances, and even had 8 Muppets and still produced a ripper. Now, it's probably really harsh, but I do have the trap on him because I think this is a once-off, and I don't think that he's going to make enough cash to be worth the trade. Nick Dacos, we've all got him, 250k. Main concern here is the fact that he is spending a little bit more time forward, and we want him to get that defensive mid-DPP. See how he goes during the next 2 weeks, but I've got fingers crossed that he actually goes down back again. Dylan Shield, playing well at the moment, around 50% CBAs, couple of 100+ scores in a row. Look, Merritt's out at the moment, so he probably needs to step up a little bit more, but the price is probably just at too much of an awkward point for me, and I'd pass. Even though he's got a really low break even, and with a modest score of 81, he'll still look to rise around 33k. Jai Caldwell and Jared Berry, both mid-price selections, around the 300 mark or close enough to. 87 for an average for Caldwell, 75 for Berry. So Caldwell's winning the battle there at this stage anyway. So break even of 14 for him, 18 for Berry. Look, you probably don't, well, you do not trade in any of these blokes at this stage. A lot more people started Berry over Caldwell. Looks like a mistake at the moment. But look, if you traded out Berry last week to a Cripps like I did, that's okay. I think it's worked out well. But at the same time, if you kept on to him, you'd be happy as well with the score that he produced. So still some money to make. Great job security, and I think he's got a really big game in him at some stage. Hopefully for owners, it's sooner rather than later. But please forgive me, Bez. It was so tough trading you out, mate. Bez is my favourite player in the comp, and it gave me great joy being able to start him in my side. But the love affair was over really before it began. So, apologies, Bez. Yeah, the love is still there though, mate. Akers just throwing him out as a bit of a pod. Lipinski, a few CBAs, spending a little bit of time up forward. George reckons that there is a chance that he gains DPP status. So if you think that that's a realistic option, you could actually jump on him this week, because I think that he'll be one of the top, just say 8 to 10 forwards with the role that he's got anyway at this stage. But the issue with, I think, the Lipinski pick, if he doesn't get that DPP status, I wouldn't like to select him as a midfielder. And you may say that the man below him, Matty Rao, only has 110, so only 2 points ahead of him on an average at the moment. But I do like Rao as a better selection. I think he's got that consistent midfield role. And look, we've all got him, I think, at this stage anyway, Matty Rao, and there's just not room for Lipinski in our midfields at this stage. If we were guaranteed to know that, yes, he will be receiving forward status in round 6, then I think he's still an okay option to jump on now. But that's a risk. If he isn't granted that status, then you're sort of stuck with him. Matt Kennedy had the third most CBAs out of the Carlton mids with 16 out of 26, but realistically, we're not really bringing him in. And Matty Crouch, 492,900 with an average of 103 so far, so just ticking along, not a really sexy option. He had 50% CBAs over the weekend. On to the midfielders under 250k. Brady Hoff sits at the top of the list this week with a negative break-even of 18. Is on the bubble, did miss a game due to health and safety protocols. Looking to go up 27k, but not a player we need to trade in. 12 disposals on the weekend, 1 contested at 66% efficiency. Doesn't get me too excited. Conor Mcdonald, he really does look a player. 15 touches, hit the scoreboard, which was nice. A little bit inaccurate with 1 goal too, but at least he's getting the opportunities. That's always a positive. He does need to clean up his disposal efficiency, as he only went at 46% in this game, and it's always going to hurt your scoring. But I have the rock-solid job security symbol on him. Just hold until the time is right, and then we can flip. Jackson Mead, I owe him an apology as I'd written him off last week. Thought there was a high chance of him receiving the sub vest. I still think there may be in the future, but he came out with his best score of the year. So he has the green arrow symbol as his scoring is heading in the right direction. A solid 78 off 18 touches, went at over 80% disposal efficiency, which is really good to see. And suddenly you're feeling okay if you're an owner. We certainly don't need to trade him in though. Dylan Stevens, man, this was disappointing. And I, for one, didn't see it coming. Not this low, anyway. I had no loop, so had to decide between him and Ward. Of course, I lost the rookie roulette and copped Stevens' abysmal 23 on field. I am slightly worried that he may get dropped, but I'm also excited about his upcoming fixture. So if he gets the opportunity to play this week and make up for his poor efforts in round 3, that would be awesome. But even if he doesn't, I think we hold. He's already pumped out a 95, so we know he's got it in him. But he needs to do a whole lot more than have 6 effective disposals in a match to warrant a spot in our sides, and in the Sydney side for that matter. Joshy Ward, 20 touches for the second week in a row, getting a load of CBAs, 19 out of 26, which was the most out of any Hawthorn midfielder. The role is absolutely there, and that's why I'm holding this bloke and just waiting for that big score to come, and I'm pretty confident that there is one coming. 8 contested possessions, but only the 1 tackle. He's not the most fieldable option at the moment, and ideally you can loop him with Stevens if you've got a non-playing player, I think. Sligo, he's a trade out for sure. Cash Gen has been killed short term by sub-score. Davies, a bit of a pod, but I don't think we need to go there. And Jade Pollack is always going to be a trap in Supercoach. Simply avoid. On to the rucks, and the man up the top of the list this week is Bubble Boy Hugh Dixon. Competed really well on the weekend. I think he keeps his spot over Bailey Williams. 10 possessions, but 8 were contested. 6 CBAs, also uses the ball well on most occasions. And I think he gives the Eagles a decent target, and he looks to be a decent player. Look, job security is always going to be a little shaky, so probably not a trade in, but at the same time, not a trade out. Jack Hayes, this was looking really scary for those running him at R2. 14 points up until half time. And then he had basically a 10-minute patch in the third to boost his score, and then kicked a goal, which also got it ticking over. The obvious concern here is the big man setup moving forward at the Saints. It's probably just a matter of time, isn't it, before one of Ryder or Rowan go down with their questionable durability. I don't think you trade him in. The ship's certainly already sailed here, almost gone up 100k already. But at the same time, he's not a trade out, and I'd keep him even if he's not named. Meek, I think, would be a good option with Darcy out long term, but with the big fella due back and Braden Pruce on the bubble next week, we just don't need to go there. Jackson, I'm not a huge fan of. A terrific player, but not a huge fan of him as a pick this year. He did come back down to earth last week, and that's closer to the score that I'd be expecting from him week in, week out. Timmy English is the man on everyone's lips at the moment. Another massive game going 150 and giving lots of coaches FOMO. 10 hitouts to advantage, 8 clearances in what was just a best on ground performance. And it's now been 3 weeks in a row where he's looked really good and not having him hurts. The main issue is the odd chance that Steph returns. If that's the case, his ceiling gets lowered significantly. But at this stage, he's looking unreal. Steph's been an emergency, but is it realistic that he returns to the side? I'm really not sure. We know what Bevo's like. He can surprise us at times with some moves that he makes, but his DPP status is really beneficial, particularly when we've got Hayes or a Dixon to swing him. Cherry, he's going to be gifted DPP status soon. So I think with English, feel free to trade him in, but there are some risks attached. Jared Witts, 414,100. I've got the ship has sailed on him there because if you were interested in the pick, you should have invested last week. If you are in need of a ruckman and you're looking for someone at a cheaper price, I think that the best play now is to look at someone like a Braden Pruce. I did give a bit of an analogy in my round review video comparing Jared Witts to the pillar that just holds up the good old Aussie veranda. There's nothing special or exciting about him. He just gets the job done every week. So I'd love to see 100 average from him. 105 plus would be obviously even better. Rob had a nice score of 122, 45 hitouts with a massive 9 tackles for the big fella. So the hunger and the appetite for the contest really impresses me. Unfortunately for Rob, we just talked about a bloke named Tim English, which probably makes him irrelevant. Sammy Draper, this one would have really hurt his very few owners. 2 possessions for an entire game is unforgivable from a SuperCoach sense, and that's why I've had to do it. He gets the poo symbol this week. Tom Hickey, he's out for 4 to 6 weeks, so is a must trade if you own. Big Maxi left my team this week, and as expected, delivered his best score of the season to date. It wasn't a monster though, and a 117 is not going to kill you. Received some nice scaling here as well. Had 20 CBAs compared to Jackson's 8, which is a positive. If you traded him to Witts or English, I think you'd still be happy, but if you held, you're also most likely to be happy enough with what he did on the weekend. I think time will tell what the right move was, but way too early to tell at this stage. Grundy, he's been super disappointing. He was meant to be the safe ruck selection this year, bookmark him in for 115, but isn't looking like it at the moment. Far from a disaster pick. Was a high score in fantasy last week, but what killed him from a SuperCoach sense was his 8 clangers and low disposal efficiency. I think it was only around 50%. So those 2 stats alone make it near impossible to smash out a decent score. So if you can clean things up, that score of 96 on the weekend could be pushing that 115 for sure. Not a time to panic, but just keep an eye on him. Rowan, now, red flags are starting to emerge here. Look great after round 1, and owners would have been patting themselves on the back, but fast forward 2 weeks, and they're now pulling their hair out and chewing their fingernails. What to do with the pick? It may be time to jump ship and sideways to an English now, because obviously Ryder's back. He had 10 more CBAs than Marshall, and this was always a risk with picking Rowan. Hayes shouldn't affect him too much as he wasn't involved in any CBAs last week. But for Marshall, 9 disposals at 66% efficiency isn't great, and the only saving grace here was the fact that he did kick a couple of goals. That score of 58 will be in his rolling price cycle for the next 2 weeks, so unless he pulls a rabbit out of a hat and goes a 140 plus type score, he'll be losing cash, and it's a really awkward spot as an owner. And Nick Nat, a 119 SuperCoach to 66 Dream Team ratio was crazy. Had a couple of really brilliant individual efforts and was starting to absolutely dominate, but then it just became too hard. You can either keep the faith here and hope that you see more of what he produced on the weekend, or else this is probably the last week to jump ship. On to the forwards, 500k plus. Not a lot to see on this slide, so we'll keep it pretty quick. Up the top, we've got Josh Dunkley, 563,700. Really bounced back after a quieter performance last week. I think going into this week could be a VC or captaincy option. Timmy Taranto, 3-rounder of 106. Expected him to be playing a little bit more time forward, but he is getting some CBAs. I've just got the binoculars on him at the moment. Just keep a watch on him. When Toby Green comes back into the side, that's when I'm going to really assess this pick. Stringer, I've got the roller coaster on. He can give you a massive week, then come through with a little bit of a poor week. And Mitch Duncan, I just don't like the pick. Age, durability, break even of 159. I've got the sell on him, But if you are a non-owner, I've got the binoculars on him. Keep a watch, because if he can string a few good games together and his body's looking good, then I think we can bring him in towards the later stages of the season. On to the forwards, 250 to 500k. The man up the top, Mr. Stephen Cornelio, 149 SuperCoach points, 39 possessions, even kick to handball ratio, 10 clearances, 5 tackles. The only flaw was his goal kicking accuracy, 0.3, but looking like a likely keeper, and that would be a huge bonus for the price that we paid. So with a negative break even of 48, projected score of 102, which is obviously achievable after what we saw last week, he's looking to rise 66,600. So I don't think that there is anyone out there that plays the game seriously that doesn't have him. But if you are that one or two people out there, please get this man into your side now. Tristan Cherry, my favourite selection from this year, 23 CBAs compared to Goldie's 11. He's clearly the main man in the ruck now, and in my opinion, he should give you an 80 to 90 average from here on. He's coming up against a hickuless Sydney ruck line, and I see another decent score incoming. Zeri versus a Peanut Laddams should be an interesting watch, but I definitely think that big Tristan should get the chocolates. Still provides value at his price, but I've got the symbol there. The ship is sailing. He's going to have guaranteed DPP status come round 6. And this also allows us to open up some other doors. So I'm absolutely wrapped as an owner. I still think there's time to jump on, but do it now. Will Brodie, he's been a terrific starting selection. He just plays to his strengths, wins clearances, can find the football, and he's lapping up the CBAs, 21 from 26, so around 80%. And the most pleasing thing of all was that his time on ground was 83%. That's unheard of for Brodie, so a really good sign. Maybe in trouble when other stars return, but for now he's providing a lot of value in our forward line. He's scoring well and making that sweet cash. It's probably too late to jump on now though. Ship has most likely sailed. And the other positive thing, and I mentioned this in my round review video, is that by the time Fifey's back and available to play in the side, I think that Brodie may have even done his job. We'll reassess the pick around that stage, but yeah, a really happy owner at the moment. I'm going to go through the next few blokes pretty quickly here. Charlie Kern, I've got the roller coaster on. He'll give you some great scores. He'll also give you some terrible scores. Himmelberg, I just think is an absolute trap. Same as Max King. He'll be a roller coaster. Most key forwards are, as we know. Matty Parker, I've got as a trap. He's in some good form at the moment, but consistency will always be an issue, I think, for Parker. McGovern, we've just got to trade out. I've got the sell symbol on him there. Hamstring troubles. This was one of the red flags with the McGovern pick. We knew it when we selected him, but hopefully he traded him out last week and brought another good player in. Jay Gresham, the role is actually there. Attended the second most CBAs for the Saints, only 2 behind Steele. And I just didn't see this mid-time coming, but it's there and he is cashing in. I think the ship has probably sailed for most people, but seems to be a decent starting pick. Congrats if you are a current owner. Cam Rayner, he just seems like a failed pick so far. 275,500. The break even is in red and it's only 55. So there's definitely some red flags there on the chopping block. Move on from him now, I recommend anyway. Isaac Heaney, I did bring him in last week, just under 500k there, so did go up a fair bit in price. Got a break even of 67, so looking to go up 22,900 with a projected score of 119. So that would be lovely. We know that these projected scores are a little bit off at times and we take them with a grain of salt, but given the fact that he's coming up against North Melbourne at home, and this is one of the reasons why I traded him in last week, the fact that he's got a really, really friendly fixture, particularly in the next 3 weeks. Now, I expect a response from North after what happened at the Gabba last week, but they haven't got the cattle to match Sydney, and Isaac Heaney, I think, does have the potential to dominate. So, hope that he racks up the possessions, hope that he really hits the scoreboard. He's such a dangerous player, arguably in career best form. I know it's only been 3 weeks, but yeah, as an owner, I'm really, really excited about what this weekend may bring. Treloar, I wish durability was an issue because he has awesome scoring power and seems to be in good form. Just not a pick I can seriously look at, but if you trust his body, I think he's fine to bring in. Zach Butters, a down game from him, and unfortunately he did receive a bit of a knock. Only 13 touches, 11 were uncontested, but laid 6 tackles, which helped him to get to at least a 50-odd. Very highly owned player, so when he has a down game, we all suffer. No major concerns from my end. If for some reason you're a non-owner, wait a few weeks and make him your first upgrade. Zach Bailey, now I apologise because I recommended to get this bloke out last week, but he went bug you, DR. Here is a lovely score for those who stuck fat and didn't listen to you, but consistency will continue to remain an issue with his current role. I love him and he's a gun, but I just wouldn't be rushing to buy him. Dacos, he's done a bit of a Dacos and he finds himself on the sidelines for a week after being suspended. Playing some decent football though, I suppose. And the Tomahawk, he'll be a roller coaster as most key forwards are. We have already seen the best and already seen the worst from the Man Mountain. Onto the forwards, under 250k. The man up the top, Mcmartin. Let's keep this one pretty short and simple. If you don't own him, make sure you bring him in. He's the definition of a must-have rookie, and he should make 150k in the blink of an eye. Great job security, great scoring potential at the lowest price possible. There's literally nothing not to like about this pick. Lockie Gallant, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Probably butchering that one. But is he the new showdown specialist? You know, booting 4 goals from only 5 possessions. Talk about good efficiency, but hopefully going to be a big part of the Crows' future. But I can't see a future with him in my SuperCoach team. He won't kick 4 goals every week. Tex, he's due back, and I assume he comes straight in. Look, Fogarty's probably the man to make way after a subpar performance or a subpar season to date. But Gallant is only really one bad game away, I think, from losing his spot. Thilthorpe is another one that will put some pressure on him. Look, congrats to Lockie for kicking a small bag on the weekend, but the competition for spots is too hot for me, and I'm personally going to be passing. Willie Rioli was really impressive in round 2, missed last week's game because of COVID protocols, so still on the bubble. Main issue is the fact that we've got so many other juicy forward options to choose from, and most of the popular options that we currently have in our side are tracking along nicely, and there's no reason to trade them out. In previous years, he would have been a more realistic option, I think. Thompson Dow. Now, personally, I can't see myself bringing in another Dow after the Paddy Dow train wreck that was in my side last year, but his numbers are actually quite good, and he managed to ton up against the Saints. I was really surprised to see that he was also the number 1 player at the Tigers for clearances and contested possessions last week. And if that didn't sound good enough, also attended a whopping 29 CBAs. It really does seem like the role is there. He'll hold his spot for the short term after that performance in particular, and it seems like Richmond really do need to blood their next generation of mids, so there could be something here. If you're looking for an ultra pod with the potential to lock in a really SuperCoach friendly role, then Tom O'Dowd could be a man. DPP status is handy for a swing here, and he's only owned currently by 687 teams. So definitely one to consider, but the price, it's a little bit awkward. If he was around the 120 to 150 mark, I think he'd appeal a lot more, but certainly don't discount him as a pick. This could be one of those ones that could really make your season. At the same time though, and this is always a risk, it could be a little bit of a once-off show here. Paddy Nash has really made the most of his second chance so far. 22 touches, 9 of those contested, and 5 tackles against Freo. Efficiency let him down, only going at 50%. So if he could clean that up, his score of 73 could certainly push an 85. Had the second most metres gained for the Eagles as well, and job security seems solid as. A shame that the ship has probably already sailed, but if you were one of the very few coaches to start him, then hats off to you. It seems like he'll work out well. Jack Ginnivan advised against trading him in last week. Nothing to see here, just avoid. Ralph Smith looks good, but I'd be a lot keener on him if Rioli wasn't in the team. There's probably better options at this stage. Durden, I've got the red arrow, green arrow symbol on because he bounced back after an extremely quiet week last week. Only the 11 possessions, but 7 were contested. He looked dangerous and also hit the scoreboard. The ship has certainly sailed here as well, and in no way, shape or form a trade in. But if you're an owner, it's now an easy hold. Finn McGuinness doesn't look like he'll have a really high ceiling this year, and this average is about what you can expect. I think dangerous to see 10 touches at only 60%, a few clangers in there as well, so I think he's going to be a very slow burn. And Rochelle looked great in week 1, as well as in the preseason, but had a quieter last 2 weeks, And this was always going to be expected with the pick. A 50-metre penalty against really hurt him. He lost over 10 points just for that one act. So that needs to be taken into account also. But at the same time, 10 possessions with 60%. It was exactly the same as Finn. With 4 Muppets in there, isn't good enough. There's no doubting his talent, but playing as a forward in Adelaide is always going to mean that there's some lower scores coming. Does have a nice ceiling though, and job security is as good as it gets. I'd definitely be holding, and the only player I'd consider trading him out for is the one and only must-have, Nick Martin. So that's it for me for now, guys. Hope all is well. I'm only making the one trade this week, and that's bringing Nick Martin into my side. If you are not a current Nick Martin owner, then I highly advise that you find a way to get him in. He is an absolute must-have. So apart from that, take care. All the best of luck this week, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.